Ooh, that looks tasty. In a world where darkness and evil are nothing more than polyominoes, there's only one thing a true hero can do: turn their heroism into cubes. Welcome, folks, to the Hungry Gamers, back with another game review, and today we are talking about Chronicles of Drunagor, Age of Darkness. This is designed by Daniel Alves and Yuriko Kunha, and published by Creative Games Studios. And I do apologize if I mispronounced any of those names. Now, before I go any further, please make sure you turn on your Klingon subtitles, because if I make any mistakes in the rules overview, that's where you'll find those corrections. And I also do need to say that this review is a little bit more of a initial thoughts than a really truly full-on review. And that's because Creative Games was kind enough to send me a copy of the game to review, but they have their next Game Found campaign coming up very, very, very soon. So I wanted to make sure that they had content out prior to that launch. So if you're watching, you can see if this is something that you think you want to jump in on, because my understanding is they'll be reprinting the original game plus those expansions, and they have a new expansion coming as well. So while I have played through a significant portion of this game, I haven't played through as much as I normally do before I review a dungeon crawl. So just do keep that in mind. Now, what Chronicles of Drunagor is it is your classic dungeon crawl style game. And each player will have a hero, or you can control more than one hero. As you can see right here, I have two heroes out. I have Vorn the fighter and Lorelei the mage. And I will say that what you're seeing here is not a spoiler. It's literally just a random setup of stuff so you can kind of see what's going on. And for those of you wondering, this over here is actually a passage, a doorway that you're able to go through. But you can't really see that at this top-down angle. Now, what differentiates this from the usual dungeon crawl is, one, the scenery and the way you create the board, and then two, the way you select what it is that your characters are going to do. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that, but if someone were to ask me for the quick, fast, and dirty what makes a difference, what makes it different, that is it. As far as the story goes, there are bad things happening in the land, and you, amongst many, many, many other adventurers, have been hired by the church to kind of figure out what's going on. And as is the want with adventurers, you kind of stumble into something much bigger than you expected. If you are not interested in how this game is played and just want to jump into my final thoughts, then you want to go to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, let's talk about what's going on here. And again, as a reminder, this is just a totally random setup that I have here, no spoilers. Now, the first thing you're going to see is you're going to see that there are these different elevations. Well, maybe you can't see, but I have a level here, which goes down to here, down to the actual table itself. And I have a little bridge that goes in between. As you can see, oops, off into the lava goes Lorelei there. So part of what happens in this game is it is modular. As you can see, you have all these different tiles here that you can place down, but each one you're able to then place in these trays to make this three-dimensional setup. And it helps you really understand what's going on in terms of elevation. And yes, along with that, there are rules for if you're attacking from elevation or you're attacking up to elevation, moving, and all of those things. Then, of course, you can kind of fall down in pits and stuff like that. And at its core, you're just doing a dungeon crawl. Now, what there is there is a set initiative track that you follow. Each game, you can't see the whole thing here, but depending on, we start here and we end over here, depending on your character class that you have chosen, because you get to choose a class, that's going to tell you where you start in the initiative every single fight. So if you're a defender, you're always going to go first. If you are a controller, you're always going to go almost last, and then everything in between. And then the bad guys, their initiative cards go on top or bottom of these different colored runes there. Now the bad guys just have a set attack pattern. You can see they always start at that initiative right there. They're always going to do 3 damage. They'll move 4 spaces. They have their range and their abilities and so on. And all of the bad guys' stats and information are right there on their initiative cards. Now, when it comes to the heroes, it's a little bit more complex, as you can imagine. Each hero has their own player board. And over here, you'll be placing gear. and you'll have some more abilities on the other side. Just for an example, I'll put one ability out over there and an armor out over there. In addition to that, you're going to have a series of cubes that are with your character, and as you go through the game, you will get more and more of these. And on your turn, you're able to move 3 spaces, diagonally is fine, and then play 2 cubes. Now you can always choose to play a cube just to keep moving, or you can place it on any of these abilities. Same thing with your abilities to the side and your armor, and it tells you what they do right on there. But so for example, right here I have Vorn here next to this cultist right there. If I wanted to attack it, I could take one of my yellow cubes and put it on a yellow space. So right here, if I put it on this guarding swing, I'm going to give myself some shields, which are going to prevent damage later on. I'm going to get to roll to hit, and I'm going to get to add 2 to my roll to hit, and I'll get to add +1 damage. Well, so what does that mean? What numbers do I need? And then for that, I look at my weapon. So I need to get a 7+, and if I hit, I will do 3 damage. Or in this case, I need to roll a 5+ because I'm getting +2 to hit, and I'll do 4 damage. Then you're going to roll your d20 and see if you hit. Now, I happen to miss, a critical miss, so I will get a penalty. A penalty moving forward as a critical fumble, and I'd do extra damage if I rolled a 20. But if I were to hit, there you go, 14, I would do some damage just like you would expect. But as you can see, as you go down here, there's a whole bunch of different types of abilities. When they attack me, I can put a cube over here to activate my armor. And of course, once you have a cube on something, you can't use it again until you've recalled everything. How do you recall everything? Once you've used all of your cubes, you pull all of them back, and you are inflicted with a curse, which means you take a black cube and you have to cover up one of your abilities. You can't use it anymore. If you ever get too many of those, you have lost the game. And of course, you have abilities to remove those. For example, right here, remove curse, you can heal 2 and cleanse 1, meaning you take one of these away. That's the core of how your heroes are going to work. The next thing I really want to point out is this game is called Age of Darkness, and that's because there is darkness that spreads. You can see some of the darkness right here, but then you also have these little spots here on the board. And usually, not always, at the end of a round, you have to go to this bag here, and you're going to draw out one of these runes. And so here, I've drawn out this one, and I would just put it on top of the initiative track, and when we get to a boss fight, it might matter. But what's more important is on the back side, there is a symbol. You can see there's that one there, that there, that there for examples. And those symbols directly correlate to darkness tiles. And what's going to happen is, again, each scenario will tell you a little bit differently of how the darkness works, but in general, it's going to start from one of these spots. And let's say I drew the long one here, and it would go towards a hero that's closest. So here's one closest to the hero. Let's move that out of the way. And so boom, the darkness would spread. And if you're in darkness, you wind up taking a penalty and taking some damage, and bad guys actually get bonuses. But then, let's say the next round, I drew another one, and I drew this one. Well, it's going to go towards the next closest hero that it can, so it would move out towards there. Luckily enough, she didn't get hit. But of course, if we drew another one, then she would get hit. And I'd put it out onto the board in the way that's best for the bad guys, like so. So now our bad guy's in the darkness, so he's going to get a bonus, and she's in the dark, so she's going to get a penalty. And pretty simple. Then the last thing is, I mentioned there was this entryway at the end. Now, if you don't want to see this, skip ahead. It is a little bit of a spoiler, but this is the very first one that you flip in the game. When you go to a door or an entranceway at the end of one of these, at the end of a tray here, when you interact with it, you open it up, it'll give you some story and tell you what's on the other side, then any special rules that you need. And as you go through, you're going to keep going through area to area until you have accomplished the mission, or one of your heroes gets knocked down twice, and by that I mean gets all the way down to 0 health twice, or you get too many of the cursed cubes and then you have lost. In between each round, you have a camp phase where you're going to get to level up and get items and so on and so on and so on. There are also unique boss fights, and what's going to happen during a boss fight is the boss is going to have their own big card, which is going to have information on there and a lot of health that you're dealing with. And they're going to have these cards laid out on the initiative track. So they're going to activate, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times each round. And most of these get stronger depending on how many
of these runes of each color are out on the track. But for the most part, that is how this game works. I do need to point out there is a way to just play one shot, not do the campaign. There is also a way to play PvP, though I have not experienced that at all. So, what do I like about this game? First of all, the toy factor and the way the table presence of this game is just great. It has that kind of topographical map feel as you have the different levels that you're literally putting out on the board, and it just looks fantastic. Along with that, the way the doors are there and you literally have to open the doors up to kind of see what's on the other side. Just the way this game looks and feels on the table is fantastic. Is it necessary? No. Not remotely. There are tons and tons of games that just mark the elevation on the board, but gosh, it's so cool when you're playing the game and then suddenly you're literally going across the bridge and there's spikes below you or whatever. Just, it's so much fun. And with the way that these little trays work, it's really easy to move the pieces around on the table, which makes it far more wieldy than a lot of other dungeon crawls as you're building them out on the board. And it's because there's not that many of the different tiles, and I say tiles, they're just cardstock almost, that you double-sided that you put in there. It's easier to set this up than a lot of other games of its ilk, and that I really, really appreciate that. The next thing that I really enjoy is the action selection system with the cubes and the way that works, how you can use it, and then it's blocked off until you pull everything back. But every time you pull everything back, you get those curse cubes. And what it does is it makes for a very fascinating give and take of when do you want to use these certain abilities and when do you want to hold off on using them and do something maybe a little bit less effective so you can later on have a really good turn. And then, of course, the way that these curse cubes go out and how it can be so hard to decide what it is that you're going to lose access to for a while. And I just think that is just masterfully done, especially because it's so easy to get rid of them. You take one cube, sometimes you take your whole turn, one cube, and you can clear stuff away. And I just think that works really, really well. I'm also intrigued by the story. I'm not necessarily grabbed yet. I haven't played a ton of the game. I've played through 3 entire chapters. There are significantly more chapters than that. And as I said at the beginning, this is a little less playtime with this game than I often do before I'll review a dungeon crawler. But just kind of getting that out there, I'm intrigued by the story. It hasn't grabbed me fully yet, but it could. So I guess what I'm saying is, the way the story is revealed, I like. I like the way you get your initial hit of text and what's going on, and then you get a little bit more story as you're going through, as you're opening those doors, which are just so much fun to play with. Such a great toy factor. And then when you finish, you wind up with another chunk of story. So I think the way it's revealed is very good. I'm just not necessarily grabbed yet, but I could be. Next thing I really like is something I didn't show in depth before, but is this interactions book. And a lot of times, you find something you can interact with on the board, and you get this delightful thing where you go to a page, and this is not really a spoiler because I've just turned to a random page, but then you have all these different choices that you can go to. And usually you can do 1 or 2 of them. I haven't come across any you can do more than 2, so that means there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 different ones on this particular thing, which means I can play through this game a couple of times and interact with this differently. And I like that. But what's fun about it is you really are making these choices blind. It's really, you look at it and there's no way to know what it's going to be. And you're looking and say, gosh, I've read this thing, I know what's going on. What would this character do? And to me, that really raises the level of immersion into the game. And I really like this. I hope other games copy this, because this is a ton of fun. And I like the artwork in here, just really enjoy that. The next thing I like is the character customization. As you're going through each character, they have their base character, and they have an alternate on the other side. And they're significantly different. There's a lot of stuff that you can do, and weapons give you lots of different options and so on, and gear, but the way you're picking your class, and those classes that you pick can really change up the type of character that you're playing. And I like the way that works, but it's not done in a way that feels heavy. I don't feel like I'm fiddling around with a lot of stuff. It's easy to level up, it's easy to grow your character, and I really do like that as well. I really appreciate that. And along with that, the next thing here is it's going to seem like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth when I get to my quibbles section, but it's not a hard game to play. It's simple. The monsters have a very simple AI. You're not spending a lot of time gathering dice and rolling dice and doing anything like that. It's very simple. The initiative is always set. You always know where you are. You always know what's going to happen. So it's very, very simple to do and manage, which means you just kind of jump right in and you play. And this game plays far lighter than I imagined it would. It's just not a heavy game. Yes, there are lots of rules and things that can happen, lots of tokens and all that, but at its core, it's a pretty quick romp. Once you get down your setup, and if you're not taking it out of the box every time, I got through playing 2 characters today on one of the chapters in 45 minutes. I mean, that is fast because it's quick and it's simple. And the last thing that I really want to praise is the darkness system, the way the darkness spreads, and you're pulling out the runes, and they have the Tetris style, and as you're pulling those runes out, if there's going to be a boss fight, like those runes are literally making the boss stronger, so you have this double push to move quickly as this darkness is chasing you, and I love that. I love that it is this thematic timer that it's putting on the game. It's forcing you to move, because if you don't, the darkness is going to hit you, it's going to hurt you, and eventually it will kill you. And that is just awesome. And the way it's done with the Tetris pieces, it's just fun. It is fun. And then we combine that with this topographical look, and you combine that with the good minis that are there and the cool way the board looks. The toy factor is so satisfying to all of it, even down to the tactile nature of moving your cubes around. Just really, really satisfying. But that doesn't mean that I think this game is perfect. So what are my quibbles with the game? And the first one is, though the game is not that hard, the rules are tough. I really struggled with the rules and just found I had lots of questions. And there were certainly times when I just said, you know what? I'm going to make a choice. And this is how I'm going to play it. And I was happy as a clam as I was playing it. But sometimes I had to make a choice. And I had to go, and I actually went and watched several videos just to try to make sure I had an idea of what it was that I was doing, because I really did struggle with the rules. And I know there's a reprint coming. And I'm hoping that those rules are going to get clarified a little bit. My next quibble is there's not a lot of variety in the core box. Am I enjoying the core box? Yes. Am I feeling like I'm satisfied playing through this core box? Absolutely. But there's only, I believe, 6 different monster types in the core box. And if you're going to play through this campaign multiple times, then you probably are going to want to pick up one of the expansions, the monster expansions or whatever it is that's out there. And while that is a little bit standard with a lot of dungeon crawl games out there, it might be that you feel like it's just not enough. I know when some of my other games that I like, that I love, wound up at the top of my top dungeon crawler list, I had to get the expansion just to get those 2 extra types of monsters, just to keep that variety just a little bit more fresh. I'm not the type of person that feels like I need 57,000 different types of mooks and minions out there, but more than 6, or whatever the number actually is. And along with that, as I showed you, it gives you these lovely alternate characters, and I love that it takes it and you get different genders you can play, different races you can play, looking at which I really appreciate. But the core box comes with the characters, but doesn't come with minis for both sides, or at least the version that I had. Maybe the Kickstarter exclusives or something did. I don't know. They were kind enough to send me this copy. And so to me, that's a little bit of a bummer, because I was like, ooh, I want to play this guy. He looks really cool. I was like, oh, no, I don't have a mini for it, so I'll play the other one. And then the last thing that I'll put out as something that may or may not bother you, and that is the main way you're doing damage with the D20. And for whatever reason, I know the math doesn't work out like it feels. But D20s feel extremely swingy, even if in reality, they're not. It feels very swingy, and that might bother you. Even though there's lots of abilities you can use. You just put the cube there and you do damage. I love those abilities. But D20s can feel very, very swingy. And so there's something that you should keep in mind and be aware of. But there you have it, folks. That is Chronicles of Drunagor. I like this game. I think it's fun. I think it's fast. I really want to get through more of it, and I wish I had the time to get through more of it before making this video, but I want to make sure it's ready for the GameFound campaign coming up. I think it's fun. I think if you're looking for a dungeon crawler that does something unique, this is for you. I think if you're looking for a dungeon crawler that just is fun to literally put on the table and look at, this is for you. If you watched that cube placement thing I did earlier and like, whoa, that's kind of cool, that's fun, then this is a game for you. It's light overall, it's fast, it does some really fun things, and I'm really enjoying it. Yes, I have a few quibbles for it, but I have quibbles for everything. And those may or may not bother you whatsoever. So there you have it, folks. As always, if we made any mistakes in the rules overview, please let me know in the comments with the timestamp. I'll get that into the Klingon subtitles. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.